Greetings and welcome back to room 303 and our talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now in the Calamus section, only 7 poems now remaining in the Calamus section, to a little poem, Sometimes with One I Love. By the way, notice it's not the one I love, it's just with one I love. Now we're going to meet again Whitman's Theodicy. We of course have our big 5, epistemology, what can you know? Ontology, who you are, psychology, the study of the individual mind, sociology, the study of the collective mind. But the 5th of those big 5 is, of course, the question of theodicy. That is to say, what do you do with pain and suffering in the world? We're going to maybe resurrect this question. Do you think it's possible that all great art is somehow born of suffering of some kind or another? We'll see how this one works out. Now, my assumption is that you've been with us at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, from the very beginning, and the inscriptions work all the way up to the poem that we just did, to the east and to the west. When we turn to Norton's to try and get some background information here, we're told that the manuscript and the 1860 text of this Calamus, number 39, conclude with a 3rd line as follows, quote, "Doubtless I could not have perceived the universe or written one of my poems if I had not freely given myself to comrades to love," end quote. The poem took its title in present reading in 1867. Let's enjoy the poem. Sometimes, with the one I love, I fill myself with rage. For fear I effuse unreturned love. But now I think there is no unreturned love. The pay is certain, one way or another. I loved a certain person ardently, and my love was not returned. Yet, out of that, I have written these songs. Now, we're going to say that one of the clear, can we call it a message or a teaching of Whitman's of Leaves of Grass, his answer to the theodicy question is to learn to ask, why did this happen for me, not why did this happen to me? We've said this many times, of course, in our study of Leaves of Grass. Let's begin with the word sometimes. That is to say, every once in a while. And Whitman loves this construction. We've seen it a number of times in Leaves of Grass. Sometimes with the one I love, I fill myself with rage. You'll remember the word rage in not heaving rib breast. For fear I effuse, remember the use of that word in Song of Myself, passage 52, unreturned love. In other words, it is the fear of all friendships or lovers that maybe I'm more into this relationship than you are. And he says, sometimes I have that feeling, but now. I told you about the immediacy of Leaves of Grass, the word now. It gets used over and over again, but now. I think there is no unreturned love. Now, if you're hearing any kind of echo at all from this, it's maybe those final lines of Song of Myself, passage number 6. Do you remember this? They are alive and well somewhere. What do you think's become of the young and the old men? What do you think's become of the women and the children? They're alive and well somewhere. The smallest sprout shows there is really no death. And if ever there was, it led forward life and does not wait at the end to arrest it and cease the moment life appeared. All goes onward and outward. Nothing collapses, and to die is different from what was supposed and luckier. Hear this line again, but now he says, I think there is no unreturned love. Now, is he thinking about Peter Doyle? Many historians of Whitman will ask this question, or another potential lover. He says, the pay, the economics of love or friendship, right? The pay is certain, one way or another. And then notice the parentheses, right? Now, again, in 1860, there was that deleted line that we read, doubtless I could not have perceived the universe or written one of my poems if I had not freely given myself to comrades to love. That was edited out and returned this line, again in parentheses. I loved a certain person. This use of the word certain, right, is always going to be a fascinating use. Ardently, and my love was not returned. Yet, out of that, I have written these songs. Well, there it is. That's Whitman's Theodicy, and of course, therein lies, I think, the major message of this poem. The artist knows how to grow through and beyond pain. Our classic example of this has to, of course, be Dante, right? The exiled Dante who finds a way through exile. We've talked a lot about this in our lectures on Dante at learnstrong.net. Finds a way to live beyond it. That is to say, stop asking, why did this happen to me? And learn how to ask, why did this happen for me? I think for Whitman, a lot of the learning how to ask that question is in fact in Leaves of Grass itself. At 2b, notice again the use of the parenthetics at the end here. I think he learned this from Shakespeare. We obviously think of Emily Dickinson when we see it. 3a, what are the greatest for you texts of jacked love, unrequited love? Obviously we think of Aeneas and Dido in the Aeneid, don't we? Think about St. Augustine. You remember that what he says in Confessions is that he wept for Dido. Of course, he will then follow it up by saying, I should have been weeping for myself and for my own soul, right? At 3b, and how can we own a poem like this? What is a pain, a suffering, a moment of suffering in your life, a rejection in your life that actually in the end helped produce something amazing? Possibly even art, we might ask. And of course, for Whitman, Leaves of Grass is the product of quite a bit of pain and suffering, and yet beautiful nonetheless. Thank you.